audible and visible, sir?
Hello, Aditya, can you hear us?
Yes, sir, I can hear you.
All right.
Is on.
Participants are please requested to add your names in your profiles. There are two participants who do not have their names in the platform.
Pratik name is there, Aditya name is there, Adrut name is there,
Alankrita is there.
Alankrita is there, no other names are not there.
Jay Patel is there.
Yeah. Don't you? No. Yeah, one who is speaking now, name is not there.
Yes, you have Nayantara is there.
Nayantara name came now. One more person. Please add your name. Sir, can you request log? Sir, no, sir. Can you log in YouTube for me? United Nations में जाओ. It's only open, you know. This is the list.
নালাগে আমি কি আমি শুনক এবাৰ অলপ জানি আছে এতিয়া just for one and a half hours আমি জানি চাব লাগিবতো তলত এটা চাই আছে হেৰি পোৱা নাই এয়া পোৱা নাই কানেকশ্যন পোৱা নাই তাই সিহঁতক কৈ কৰিব তুমি তোমাদের ফোনটো নাপাও নালাগে তুমি অলপ হৈ যাব এই কথা এইবিলাক কৰাত নহ'ব নালাগে
Hello everyone, welcome to United Nations 75 Dialogue hosted by Assam Don Bosco University. Am I audible and visible to everyone?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir.
All right. At this stage, okay. At this stage, I request everyone to turn on their microphones and their cameras, please.
Yes, sir.
I cannot see the visuals from Nayantara. And Aditya Trivedi. So it's still 3 minutes to 3 o'clock, and we are waiting for Dr. Damodaran to join in. Since he is joining from New York City, so it is quite early for him. So let's give him 3 minutes. Also, I would like to request all the participants to mute their microphones when they are not speaking.
Yes, sir.
So we have got another participant who does not have name in their profile. So if you could please turn on your microphone and your cameras and add your name in the profile. All right. So it's Dr. Jonathan here.
Where do you need me to add my name?
Bottom. But you can, madam, you can add your name in the bottom right corner. You have 3 dots. So if you click on the 3 dots, on the topmost option, you have the option of adding a name. So has Dr. Damodaran joined in too? All right. So I think everyone is here. Can everyone please turn on their cameras? I think Mr. Ashish's camera is off. So everyone is here. Welcome everyone to the United Nations 75 Dialogue hosted by Assam Don Bosco University. And today we will be having a conversation on inequality, bridging the effect. You know that inequality is a burning issue in our world right now, and it is a proper time because we're at a precipice of change. And we want to make sure that whatever we are leaving behind for our children and our grandchildren, we are adding value to this world and the value to the society as a whole. So we want to ensure that we leave behind a world which is more inclusive, more equal, and has equal opportunities for everyone. So this dialogue is pertaining to this. And as the Secretary General of the United Nations has said, this is the biggest global conversation ever organized. And this is really a vital platform when youth students like you can make your impact and can give your suggestions to the UN Secretary General as to what we want to do for the next 25 years. Our vision is to make an impact in the year 2045 so that we achieve our sustainable development goals and we work towards a more inclusive society. So having said that, I would like to extend our heartiest welcome to Dr. Ramu Damodaran, Chief of Academic Impact United Nations, and Dr. Madhulika Jonathan, Chief of UNICEF Assam. So they have kindly agreed to be here with us and to deliberate with us as to our future. And I would also like to introduce our participants, starting with Mr. Atrut Ashish. He's from National Law University. Then we have Mr. Pratik Agarwal from Assam Don Bosco University. Then we have Nayantara. She's from Sarla Birla Gyan Jyoti. Then we have Alankrita Datta. She's from Delhi Public School, Guwahati. Then we have Jay Patel, who is from University of Twente. Then we have Arindam Sinha. He is from Tejpur University. Then we have Riyan Burgohai. He is from EPS Guwahati. Then we have Deepa Saroj Kumar, who is from Assam Don Bosco University. And finally, we have Aditya, who is from National Law University. So we have a mix of people here from all backgrounds and across almost every age group here. Unfortunately, one of our participants, Ms. Soumya Kashyap, she is not been able to join because of a natural disaster which struck a few days back in India. But I'm sure she is watching from the YouTube stream. So with having said that, I would like to request now Dr. Damodaran to kick off the dialogue with a brief speech. Dr. Damodaran, sorry, you are not audible. Is Dr. Damodaran audible to other participants?
No, sir, he is not audible.
All right. No, not yet, sir. Dr. Damodaran?
Hello. Am I coming through?
Yes. Yes. Now you're audible.
Okay, I'm sorry. Sorry, I've moved on to the other device. Hi, am I audible now? Okay, thanks so much. So I've just moved on to the backup here.
Yes, your connection is a bit.
No, the connection is not at all good, I'm afraid, because I also couldn't hear you very clearly. But we'll make do with as best as we can, I suppose.
Okay. Yes, now it is okay.
It's okay now? Right, okay, let me... Yeah, okay.
Yes, now it is okay.
Okay, so it's coming through, right? Okay, thanks. So I wanted to begin by, first of all, are we okay now? Hello?
Yes.
Okay. I wanted to begin by, first of all, apologizing for this technical...
Yes.
Yeah. I mean, I can see all of you and I can see wonderful smiling faces, which is a good thing. At this time of, I know a lot has been happening in the world, in our country, in India. You mentioned one of our participants has not been able to join us because of the problem of the hurricane which struck our coast a few days ago. And I think this all the more makes it clear why it's so essential and important for us to pause for a moment and look back upon what it is that the United Nations brought to us. And I've always been inspired personally by the mission of the Salesians, which is what you in Don Bosco and around the world try and accomplish. And one of the most key tenets of the Salesians has been the motto of "Give me your souls and keep the rest." And I think that in a very real sense was what the United Nations was about. Because the United Nations cannot really claim to be an organization of all the 8 billion people on the planet in a realistic sense. But it can be an organization which brings together the souls of the 8 billion in a common cause, and as you said so eloquently just now, particularly in the cause of these Sustainable Development Goals. I wanted to also reflect upon a very important occurrence today, May the 27th in history. On May the 27th, 1917, Pope Benedict at the Vatican issued the first consolidated set of Catholic canons and laws emanating from the Church. So this was a combination of all that had been put together over several hundred years of liturgical discourse and analysis and worship and reflection. But there were so many of these around that it seemed necessary to try and cohese these in a single document. And if you look at that metaphor and you think of the world 75 years ago, when in 1945, nations of the world, including our own country, which was not at that point independent, gathered in San Francisco, exactly at this time, 75 years ago, and within a space of 8 weeks or so, had been able to distill the human yearning of the souls that the Salesians speak about into a document, a living document that we know as the UN Charter. So it was an attempt to bring together all of recorded human aspiration, yearning, intention into a workable living document. And when you go to the theme of your conference today, one of the very first words in that charter in the beginning is the equal rights of men and women and of nations large and small. And what does that show to us? It shows us that even in that very brief period while the charter was being drafted, there was the intent of knowing that the souls of human beings are one. The gender does not matter. No one has a greater proprietary right to superiority or to being in a leadership role because of the gender that person happens to occupy. And equally true of nations. We are in many ways blessed by a large, exuberant, extraordinary nation, the nation of India today, which stretches from Assam to Maharashtra, to Kerala, to Kashmir. And we are one. And yet we are the first to recognize that we as a nation, when we come to the United Nations, we come there on the same terms as a nation that might be smaller than the city of Guwahati, but yet which has created its own selfhood. And so what I'm trying to suggest to you is that the moral imperative, the individual imperative that is instilled in all of us in school, in university, in college, and particularly under the guidance of an order like the Salesians, or being in an institution like Don Bosco, at one level it's very personal to us, but at another level it's something that we share and extend to the nations of the world, not only those to which we belong, but those who coexist with us. I'm really looking forward to listening to all that you have to say, technology willing, but I do very much hope that in your conversation today, and as you go beyond and think about, as you rightly said, the world and the United Nations in 2045, when all of you, I dare say, and I hope will be around, you will see that all of this has been, in many ways, a great experiment. The world dared to do something in 1945. It took the challenge. It set itself a timetable. It did so, as I said, in a matter of 8 to 10 weeks. Now, it has renewed that challenge with the Sustainable Development Goals. Just as we in our lives, we go through primary school, we go through high school, then we set ourselves the challenge of college and university, and then the challenge of a job, of a family, of being a productive citizen. We have come to that stage of the United Nations. But unlike the individual who has only herself or himself ultimately to draw upon, we as the United Nations can draw upon the world. And that world is you. Thank you.
Thank you, Doctor. As you said, it is true that the abundance of natural resources that we have been blessed with, none of us can say that we have claim, but all of us do have claim. It's not the individual, but it's all of us as a humanity. And in this year, especially in 2020, as we are seeing this unprecedented crisis of COVID, it has brought all the human race, the entire human race, to a common level, to a common ground, wherein a crisis has made all sorts of inequalities disappear, and it has hit all of us. So now, more than ever, international cooperation and a sense of belongingness is more important than it has ever been. So with that note, I would like to request now our second guest, Dr. Jonathan, Chief of Field Station UNICEF Assam, to give her inputs to this dialogue.
Thank you so much. So heartening to hear you, Mr. Ramu Damodaran. Really nice to hear your thoughts and the connections that you make across many years, and so heartening to also see that whatever we started off in the context of inequality still stands true and stands strong. So just to take it from there, like to speak to all the representatives of NLU, representatives from NLU, IIT, the universities, especially the Don Bosco University, Tezpur University, Delhi Public School, Sallah Business School, and also the participants who have tuned in to listen to today's UN75 dialogue. A very good afternoon from a very rainy Guwahati. Let me begin by first thanking the Assam Don Bosco University for organizing this UNICEF, this UN75 dialogue. And you know that the UN marks its 75th anniversary this year. Mr. Damodaran was just speaking about it. And this is a time for great challenge for the world, because what we are dealing with is almost unprecedented. We could not have thought of it even last year, same time. And COVID-19 continues to affect the lives of people across the world, impacting not just their lives, but also livelihoods and destabilizing our global economy. And while this is all happening, the UN has continued with efforts to fight the pandemic. And the UN75 dialogue then is one such big effort to provide the public a chance to shape our collective future. I want to thank you for this time to speak to you. Also love to engage with students, to listen into you, to listen to your thoughts. Today's issue, the theme that you have that is there for today's deliberation is a very critical issue and very relevant today, as we see how different groups of people in different geographies, in different countries, within our own country, India, are affected with COVID-19, the issue of inequality. Let me begin by quoting the Nobel laureate Sri Amartya Sen and Jean Rey, who put it very simply that while we should be happy that some parts of India have started to resemble the advancement of California, we have a lot to do to remove the disparity that confronts us every day while we are in our homes, in our offices, schools, universities, businesses, and on the streets. The instances of illiteracy, poverty, unemployment, child abuse, and gender-based violence, the lack of access to basic amenities, food, drinking water, health, hygiene, what we see around us, read about in the media, are due to existing inequities. And let me then come to the point of what is the basic difference between inequity and inequality. Equality requires everyone to have the same resources, while equity requires everyone to have the same opportunity to access the same resources. The aim of equity-focused policies is not to eliminate all differences so that everyone has the same level of income and health and education. Rather, the goal is to eliminate the unfair and avoidable circumstances that deprive children of their rights. Inequities generally arise when certain population groups are deprived of basic resources that are available to other groups. For example, young people will always be healthier than the older people, the elderly group. And female newborns generally tend to have lower birth weights than male newborns. These disparities cannot be described as inequities since they are caused by unavoidable biological factors. If, however, girls and boys show dramatic differences in nutrition status or immunization levels, the disparity would likely be due to social rather than biological factors and would be considered unnecessary and avoidable. So when we talk about gender discrimination and other socio-political and economic forces that systematically deny rights of specific groups such as girls, children of minority groups, children with special needs, or they become a cause of great concern from an equity perspective. UNICEF employs an equity-based approach in all areas of work, and what it really means is that if we look at children in our tea gardens and we look at children in the cities, if we look at the education indicators, look at learning outcomes, we want that learning outcomes for children who study in the smaller elementary schools within the tea gardens have the same learning outcomes of the children who go to the private schools. We want to understand and address the root causes of inequality so that children, particularly those who suffer the worst deprivations, have access to education, healthcare, sanitation, clean water, protection, and other services that are necessary for their survival, growth, and development. When we speak of the Northeast states, these states have have really been, I would not use the word blind spot, that would be very unpolitical, not politically correct statement, but they have remained the most backward regions of the state, of the country, with very low levels of private investment. There is an overwhelming dependence on resources from the central government. While other states, the central government contribution is 60 and the state share is 40. In the Northeast, the central government dependence is 90% and the state contribution is only 10%. There is also a huge dependence on public investment. For UNICEF in the Northeast, the focus has largely been on understanding the inequity patterns and their causes, which is why a large proportion of our work is directed towards policy dialogue and programming, planning that with the overall objective of reducing disparities in child rights and well-being. We have been working very closely with the Niti Aayog based in the central government in New Delhi, working closely with the aspirational districts, which, as you know, are the districts with where the children have the most deprivations, where the indicators continue to need a special nudge to improve the status of women and children. And we work closely with the state government, universities, and our development partners, WHO, who are also UN sister agencies, WHO, UNDP, UN Women, and we work with them. UNICEF is the lead partner for the effective implementation of the reproductive, maternal, newborn, child, and adolescent health program. And we work with a number of partners to address the issue of undernutrition in children and women, especially looking out for women with severe anemia, looking for children with severe undernutrition, with a specific focus on stunting. The other focus we have tried to bring is to the first 1,000 days, which is from the time the baby is conceived by the woman, by the mother, and then for the first 2 years of life. The investment in the first 1,000 days of life, which is early childhood care and development, that is a very important piece that we want partners, governments to invest in, so that children then have an equal playing field, because we've invested equally in every child born in the first 1,000 days, and that gives each child then that required spurt to grow, to survive, to develop. We also work closely then with the Department of Social Welfare, Police, and Judiciary for child protection services, for a protective environment for children, working also closely with the Education Department, because we know that when a child is educated, when she is in school, when he is in school, then it reduces the violations of child rights, child labor, the violations of child marriage, and results in an empowered adolescent who is then looking forward and aspiring for a better life and better engagement to kind of give back to society, to give back to their own communities. A very large part of our effort is also towards assessing, anticipating risks faced by children, especially because Northeast is a multi-hazardous territory. We are in seismic zone 5, which makes us very prone to earthquakes. We are prone to floods because of the mighty Brahmaputra. We're also in the middle of a pandemic. So there are these multiple hazards. The Northeast, when we go into Meghalaya, we go to Nagaland, then after the heavy rains, which are now starting to happen after the cyclone, and also tend to happen every year, there are major landslides which also affect access to care. I feel that this really is the right opportunity to deliberate on how we can strive and drive a better world through participation, cooperation, solidarity, inclusion, determination, fostering innovation, multilateralism, and communication. Such platforms and dialogues will facilitate the creation of a cadre of leaders who will be able to envision a transformed future. We're looking forward to the World Sustainable Development Goals, and we look forward to to platforms like this, which will channelize creative and innovative pursuits into a meaningful social change through young people, young leaders, strengthen networks, strengthen partnerships, so that we can make the world a better place, not just for ourselves, but also for the future, for children and for women. And I look forward to listening to your deliberations. Thank you for this opportunity to be able to connect with you. Wishing you all the best for deliberations that will be followed. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Dr. Jonathan. So, as you rightly said, inequality within the country needs to be addressed. We have made a lot of progress in the last 2 decades, in the last couple of decades, where now nations, the inequality between the nations has decreased. But what we are facing now, what is the main challenge from the perspective of India, is the inequality within the country. It has, just look at the present crisis that the migrant laborers are facing during the COVID crisis. In this COVID scenario, we are facing 2 Indias. One part of the population is eating, sleeping, and relaxing at home, whereas the other part of the population is stranded in railway stations and being killed in road accidents, railway accidents, etc., etc. So it is vital, as Dr. Jonathan said, that we do address the inequality within the country. So in that regard, let's hear the views of our Mr. Rian Buragohai from DPS Guwahati.
Firstly, greetings to Damodaran sir and Madhulika ma'am and all the members present here. I, Rian Buragohai, a student of Delhi Public School, Guwahati, 12th standard, feel immensely delighted to be a part of this dialogue. And also thanks to Abhishek sir for organizing this platform so that we are able to express our views as the young generation. Well, I would like to begin this dialogue by quoting Dalai Lama, who said, there can be no peace as long as there is grinding poverty, social injustice, inequality, oppression, and as long as the weak and the small continue to be trodden by the mighty and powerful. And this is ultimately the crestfallen reality of the 21st century that we live in. Honorable members, in every society, people have a greater share of valued resources, be it money, be it property, education, health, and power than the others. These social resources can be broadly divided into 3 forms of capital. Number 1, economic capital in the form of assets and income. Number 2, cultural capital in the form of educational qualification and status. And lastly, social capital as a network of contacts. Patterns of unequal access to these capitals is what we can call or determine to be inequality. In my opinion, one of the major reasons why economic inequality exists in many countries today is because of the existence of the very institution of private property and crony capitalism. As rightly noted by Karl Marx, this has led to class conflicts in the society and has divided the entire society into have and have-nots. And it has also led to political domination by few sections. If we may, in this case, take a moment to recall about the historic Soviet model, which had helped to reduce economic inequalities to a great extent, and it had become a proponent of an egalitarian society. It is pretty much ironic that mankind had came into existence because of the women. And today it is the women who face the maximum inequality in this world. Hence, from this forum today, my message to all the men watching this dialogue would be that respecting the women in your life is being a real man. And all the women watching this, you all are the largest reservoir of untapped talent in this world. This is something which I have believed and preached right since my childhood, because I have always believed that it is the women who have a lot of potential and they are the ones who are the targeted sections of the society. And we need to support each and every movement that are driven by women's rights. The dialogue will be incomplete if I don't mention that the world we live in today is also driven by the notions of racism, homophobia, xenophobia, casteism, especially in our country, which has had a caste system which has been so much discriminatory in nature, as well as Islamophobia, each of which is a grave dimension of inequality. There are also migrants, there are specially able people, there are refugees who are too striving for equality. In the midst of this COVID outbreak, amidst this lockdown, so many people are losing their lives. So many people have lost their jobs. A few weeks back, there was an incident where Uber had called up a Zoom meeting and fired more than 3,000 employees. And on the other hand, there are people sitting in the comfortable zones of their homes and complaining about the lack of domestic maid and the lack of domestic help in their houses. So this is the divide that we have today. Well, one of the important questions is, what kind of a world do we basically aspire? Well, in my opinion, I aspire for a very simple world where every person has all the basic amenities, be it food, clothing, and shelter, where going to school is no longer a dream for a child, and where healthcare is affordable and accessible to all. Well, my words may seem like an utopian vision, but there is nothing we can't achieve. While for overcoming economic inequalities, we need to effectively implement the first two sustainable development goals laid by the United Nations. That is, number one, no poverty, and number two, zero hunger. But when we talk about the social inequalities, which we human beings have ourselves created, we have to resolve them with a change in the perception and mindset. And for that, I propose only a one-word solution, which I believe is the passport for our freedom and liberation. That is the power of education, which should be accessible to all. By education here, I do not infer making our youth as doctors and engineers, making them robots instead of training them to become skilled, and simply judging them based on the potential of a mark sheet, which would determine their career. I believe that moral and value-based education should be there in the curriculums, which would make our education system robust. We can learn from the education systems which has been followed in countries like Norway and Finland, which have been so much successful. And this would be my request to the United Nations Secretary General. When we mold the perceptions right from the grassroots level, it is then we settle the future inequalities for all. In conclusion, as Shakespeare says, all the world is a stage and all the men and women are the players. So being the players, it is upon us to bridge the divide that exists between us and adopt the ideal of live and let live. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rayan. Wonderful speech. Shall we hear what Aditya Trivedi has to say?
Very good afternoon to all of you. Am I audible and visible? Yes. Very good afternoon to all of you. I acknowledge the presence of the United Nations officials here, and I also appreciate the initiative of Don Bosco to bring we young students to this platform. We are here to talk on global dialogue on inequality, bridging the divide. When we talk about bridging the divide, then there might be a kind of divide or division which we need to bridge upon, which we need to work upon. And it is there is a world map behind me, and this world believes, or this world works on the principle that inequality breeds inequality, and there is a divide which we need to work upon, and there are some points, there are some provisos which I will be dealing with in my particular speech, relating to social, political, economic, and cultural aspects. Talking about the social inequalities, there is social stress in our society. We see social tensions. People feel superior, people feel inferior, or people feel divided. Why we are experiencing these kind of divisions? A very good thing is taught to me by my father in my childhood, that don't let your mind to be a dustbin. Don't let bad things or discriminating things in your mind and develop some kind of provisions that divide people or that make an unequal world. We all are here to make this world a better place. If I talk about cultural inequalities, then we have some jargons like xenocentrism. There are some cultures who believe themselves superior than others. There is nothing wrong in believing in our own culture. But when we consider ourselves as superior, then we consider we do not consider others' opinions, or we do not respect others' cultures. And xenocentrism is a big problem nowadays. A great sociologist, Emile Durkheim, has said that when we move from organic society to a complex society, when we were early humans earlier, we lived in a simpler society, but nowadays we are living in a complex society, a technology driven society. We are living in IT age, information age, where technology is a great leveler, and we are seeing that we all are together now to deliberate upon this particular topic due to the help of technology. And technology is a great leveler, and I see that in the next 20 years and 20 plus years we will be seeing the impact of technology towards bridging this divide. If I talk about the political inequalities, then we humans, we earthlings, we just stuck among ourselves as political, in the form of political partisanship, in the form of ideological differences. We need to respect ideas, because ideas convert into actions, and actions can change the world. And we need to respect the ideas, so that ideas should not divide the society, rather than ideas should be used to construct the society. We should use ideas in a constructive manner. If I talk about economic inequalities, then we see that we are facing rich poor divide, we are facing the village and urban population divide. If I was reading the United Nations issue on this particular inequality topic, and I saw that there was a question that do you think that urbanization should be there? Yes, I think that urbanization should be there, but not by rural boycott. We should be developing bullet trains. We should be developing our infrastructure, but not by taking the lands of poor people, or not by disturbing the resources, or disturbing the equal opportunities which are given to them. Opportunities should be equally accessible to them. It is not wrong that I am wearing this suit, so I should not respect the person who is wearing a shawl. This is completely wrong. We all should respect each other, and when we will respect each other, this particular concept of inequality, which is breeded in our mind. I say that when a child is taught about inequality, equality from his childhood only, from parenting only, then he will never think that the world is unequal. And also, when we think that we have to make this world a better place, we have optimistic ideas in our mind. We see the world in a very positive sense, but we also have to, along with the optimistic provisions, we also have to look upon realistic provisions, that how we can change this. I propose an idea of arise, aware, and award. Arise, your fellow citizens, fellow students, fellow academicians, fellow officials, then make them aware about the issues, the social issues, legal issues, political issues, the divides which are there, bridge the divide, and then award them. The person who is working in this particular field of bridging the divide, they should also be awarded. The arise, aware, and award can be a solution to this particular problem. And if I were to ask to give a, if I were asked to give a message to the Secretary General, then I would say to the Honorable Secretary General of United Nations to proceed towards regionalization of United Nations. We all are the students and officials here. We know about the working of United Nations, and we all are aware of an international language known as English. But when we go to a remote village in Assam, or a village in my home state Madhya Pradesh, they will not know what United Nations is doing, or they will not know about the campaigns and the exemplary initiatives of United Nations. So if United Nations also promote their programs in regional languages, or if remote places, The ground zero reports, the ground level reports, the ground level reporting, if done, will do wonders. With this, I end my speech. Thank you.
Thank you, Aditya. Now, should I request all participants to stick to the timelines because we have some constraints of time. So, may I request everyone to keep their speeches to limited to 3 minutes, please. So, now shall we hear what Mr. Pratik Agarwal from Assam Don Bosco University has to say?
Good afternoon, everyone. I hope I am audible to everyone.
Yes, you are.
I think my initial start here. Lucky to be part of the thank you, sir, for including this everything.
Pratik, please switch off
Everyone
your
is
video. Please switch off your video. I think your network is slow. Could you please switch off your video and speak?
so I
No, it's still not working. Let's come back to you in some time. You please switch off your video and be present. We'll come back to you later once your network improves. So, shall I now invite Mr. Jay Patil to give his views?
Thank you, Mr. Chaudhary. I'd like to thank everyone here for participating and for Assam Don Bosco University for organizing this. Am I audible to everybody?
Yes, you are.
Yeah, perfect. That's great. I'd also like to thank Dr. Damodaran and Ms. Jonathan for being here with us. It's a great honor and opportunity for us to actually be discussing this with them. I'd like to thank Rian and Aditya for their thoughts. They were very well articulated, and I'd actually like to build on something that both of you had said. Rian, you emphasized the importance of education, which I thought is something that is very critical in this dialogue in inequality. I really appreciate that both of you have talked about sort of constructive ways in which we can actually bridge this gap through education, through respect, through policies that are targeted at the ground level. In this dialogue, I'd really appreciate it if we could actually sort of look or think at how these initiatives and how these policies or how these tools like technology actually, though possibly a great leveler, also can be very dangerous in leaving people behind. It's not all a very clear and easy solution. It's a very complex challenge that we actually are struggling with here. And so in this dialogue, I'd actually like us to focus more on sort of technology as a great leveler. Yes, it is. But there are drawbacks. There are ways in which specific communities get left behind. Technologies like the internet, while connecting people, have also led to things like discrimination, have incited violence, and sort of keep people apart. So in this dialogue, that is one thing through the benefits of sort of education. I'd like to sort of come back to the problem, or come back to a concept of problem solving, not as simply bringing in technology or bringing in models, policies, solutions, and sort of bringing that in, but actually looking at technology or engineering as a problem-solving method that's actually working with local communities, working with the grassroots levels to actually develop solutions that are actually relevant to that context. This is very reminiscent of Gandhi's model of sort of rural development that he had, where he believed that at the core, what we really need to be doing is not sort of bringing industry to rural villages, but actually promoting or sort of self-empowering villages to actually develop their capabilities, their entrepreneurship, and that's something. Or how can that be sort of achieved? How can we sort of build networks through the UN? How can we bring technology that is appropriate for these contexts? Is something I'd love to see in this dialogue. Thank you.
Yes, that's right, Jay. Thank you for your comment. And I think what you have touched upon is very relevant because technology, as you said, can be a great leveler, but it can also be very dangerous because we have sections of people, not only in our country, but all across the world, who are deprived of basic power at their homes. So I think United Nations as an international organization can pitch in and try to take technology in such a way that it results in development and not in more exclusions rather than inclusions. So can Mr. Arindam Sinha from Tejpur University like to comment on this?
Good afternoon, everyone. It gives me immense pleasure to be a part of this dialogue, and I would acknowledge the presence of Dr. Damodaran, Dr. Jonathan, and also Abhishek to organize this brilliant event. As my fellow speakers have rightly, they have given some insights on the facts about education and the impact of political scenarios. And also, I would like to agree with what Jay said, is about certain specific communities are left behind when it comes to education, which I would like to put some insight because, there's a different sections of people. One are richer, one is poorer section. So richer people, what they do, if you go in a depth, you would realize that even before the child is born, they are suffering inequality, like regarding nourishment on their fetus development. So what happens, you don't realize, but when the child is born, deprived of proper nourishment, it suffers throughout the entire life. And those socially high-class people, what they do is that they are able to invest formal education to their kids, and also they gave some social good connections later in life, and which act as an enrichment in later stages in their life, which help them earn more in comparison to the other sections of people. Also, what happens is that most people fear about the inequalities having corrosive effect in societies, worse places to live in, not just for the poor, but also for the rich. As inequality reduces social mobility, it is hard to climb the ladders when the rungs are growing apart, which is happening these days. Abhishek mentioned about a point that certain section of people are not accessing the technology as per the need, and United Nations should look forward to making use of a proper contingent of bringing technology to its proper use. So before concluding, I would like to just extend my opinion to the Secretary General of United Nations to look into this matters. As we have time constraints, I would not go in a proper detail or explicit way. One should ensure basic income guarantee. So that will allow everyone to be involved in the process of tax payment. So we will have a redistribution of proper tax, which would be really helpful for people at large. As we are always aware of the fact that to address a large number of people, we have to address a nation. A nation is a proper section of various people living in at the same time. And also, United Nations should look that education should be accessible by all different kinds of people. As one of my fellow speakers, Aditya, he proposed a really good idea to have regional languages, a possibility to interact UN guidelines. Most people aren't aware of what UN is capable of and what they're imparting. So in India, as we have a lot of ethnicity, varied ethnicity, so to connect with them, I think we should focus more on empowering this deliberation of regional languages to instruct those people about the guidelines, what UN has to offer. And also another point which Jay mentioned is to go forward with an inclusive development. I recently come across an article which was published in MIT, where it was written that over a span of decades, like provision of casteism or the provision of the other caste in India, like ST and ST getting special provisions to apply for exams or maybe jobs, have actually resulted in an inclusive development, and which would result in a higher economic growth in a wider sense if it persists for a longer while. So before concluding, I would like to end with a quote, is that the problems like education, economic, which are very fundamental needs we have to look after. There's a quote by saying, there is a limit to the number of wine and Armani suits which one can keep on drinking or wearing, but there is no end to this problem. And I think this is a great opportunity for everyone to participate in this and take forward all the suggestions. Thank you.
Thank you, Arindam. Excellent points. So, shall we hear what Nayantara has to say about this?
Good afternoon, everyone. First of all, I'd like to thank the Don Bosco University and the United Nations for this initiative that gives us a chance to express our views, our opinions, to bring something new to the table. I believe that a world without inequality or asymmetry is almost unimaginable. Inequality is not always necessarily something that is undesirable. A CEO of a company being paid a different amount than an entry-level job employee is not an inequality that we need to expel. Inequalities that are created on unjust, morally, ethically unjustifiable lines are the ones that we need to target. Development, when we look at the term development, we often think of access to material pleasures, or just living a life that is completely robotic, that focuses on productivity, that focuses on material gains. But I believe that development has to embody the meaning of holistic growth, holistic overall happiness and satisfaction in all areas as human beings. Development cannot be used when it is just partial in nature. Horizontal inequalities, gender inequality, sexualism are some of the forms of inequality that need to be addressed in order to attain sustainability and a holistic development. So today, I'd like to speak on certain issues that I feel need to be considered to bridge the divide. One of the many points that Rian Boragahai so eloquently talked about is gender inequality and the need to actually incorporate the feministic perspective into our daily lives. Now, being a female, I strongly identify with the feminist movement, and I think often we forget what the movement really tries to articulate. A lot of the times, I think we all are very much familiar with terms like Nazis or pseudo-feminists, and they often are associated with views that are seen as radical or extreme. Now, that is not the goal of feminism. The feminist movement does not promote misandry or does not promote the oppression of men. Here, the feministic movement is here to promote equality for both genders. But with this being said, we cannot ignore the fact that we still continue to live in a world where women are hindered due to different societal expectations or norms, or they're marginalized in political leadership. So we still need to focus on empowering women so that they can be at an equal standing as men, especially with the pandemic that our world is combating at this moment. We have to acknowledge the effect that the pandemic is having in terms of unraveling the limited but precious progress that the world has made with gender equality. Girls and women, the UN report on COVID-19 and girls and women has shown that there's a spike in domestic violence, who are trapped in their houses with their abusers, or the loss of employment of women who are mostly employed in informal, low-paying menial jobs. Moreover, the frontline responders or the healthcare workers are also largely female, who is nurses, and they also are risking their lives and so bravely putting forward their contribution in fighting the pandemic. Secondly, I'd also like to highlight the issue of sexualism or discrimination based on one's sexual orientation. Although sexual orientation is a relatively recent notion in human rights and is a controversial one at that, it does not change the fact that those who fall within the spectrum aren't entitled to the same rights as any other person. An individual identifying himself or herself as a member of the LGBTQIA+ community does not serve as a valid justification for engaging in discriminatory practices against them. Fighting for the equality of all those in the sexual orientation spectrum is crucial for peaceful global society. I would also like to build up on what Aditya Trivedi said about regionalization and how it would be a better way to actually connect the entire world, and so that we can march towards a better future. Now, we humans, we have, as Abraham Maslow once said, we have an inbuilt psychological need to be able to identify with a community that's greater than ourselves, that is greater than us as individuals. And giving and regionalization of UN programs, UN initiatives will actually satisfy that need. The feeling of knowing that we are a part of something big, something significant, something important, will actually help us come together and work in cooperation and coordination towards building the world that we so deserve. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Nayantara. So, can Abdru Tashish from National Law University give his views?
So, good afternoon, everyone. I feel privileged to be a part of this initiative, UN75 dialogue, which has taken the turn of a global movement now. So, the topic for today's dialogue happens to be inequality, bridging the divide. I'll be speaking about the state of inequality, the changes that are need to be brought, and the world I aspire to see in 2045. To begin with, I would like to draw the attention of the House to the state of inequality in and around the globe with the help of a couple of true but distressing facts. As per a global survey, the 22 richest men in the world have more wealth than all the women in Africa. According to another report of Oxfam India, it would take 941 years for a minimum wage worker in rural India to earn what the top paid executive at a leading Indian company earns in a year. While these happen to be numbers from just two reports showing gender inequality and regional income disparity, there is no denying the fact that none of us are oblivious to the inequalities in our present-day society. It is in times of crisis like the one we are facing, the global pandemic, that the vast disparities become evident more than ever. In the last few days, we have got to know who can stock up on food and who cannot, who can work from home and still receive a paycheck and who cannot, which students can attend online lectures in the comfort of their houses and the others who cannot. Since inequality has a direct impact on economy and it undermines our fight against poverty, which acts like a cycle and further widens the inequality, it is imperative that we bridge this gap. Inequality can be majorly classified into two broad categories, that is socio-political inequality and economic inequality. I believe that education is the best tool to tackle socio-political inequality, that is inequality prevailing on the basis of caste, religion, race, etc. Since education incorporates thinking process, people are likely to give up on their baseless social prejudices. Definitely, technology will play a key role in putting these solutions to implementation. On the other hand, in my opinion, education cannot be the sole factor to bridge the income disparity, because a rich man's child is bound to inherit more wealth than a poor man's child. Also, a tactical businessman is likely to make more profits than a non-technical counterpart. Therefore, to fight income disparity, in addition to education, we need reforms in the tax policies, amendments in the labor laws, and we need to promote CSR, that is corporate social responsibility. A review of the labor laws is a must, because I guess none of us would disagree that in the past few days, we have witnessed more politicization than help of the issue of migrant laborers. We are in such a situation where we are compelled to call our own laborers as migrant laborers. We have failed them on our Labor's Day. So in the next 25 years, I want the world to strive towards an egalitarian society. Even though a complete egalitarian society is not achievable, as dynamism is intrinsic to societal existence, we can try to bring the world as close to egalitarianism as we can, so that after 25 years, there is free education for all, and the only way we respond to any crisis is by the way of humanity. So that we do away with the digital divide, gender inequality, income inequality, and inequality of other sorts, and we live in a world based on collaboration, innovation, and action, where there is no absence of coordination among the global leaders. That is the changes I want to see and the world I'd like to live in 25 years from now. Thank you.
Thank you. So, as the participants are saying, you are touching upon things like political inequality, technological inequality, social inequality. You are touching upon the nourishment of children and women. But there is also a moral side to this. Don't you think that this is our moral responsibility to ensure that we remove this kind of inequalities? I think that it is our moral responsibility as well, because what we are leaving behind for our children and our grandchildren. We don't want to leave a society which is fractured, more fractured than what it is today. The uh, the fractal lines in the society became very evident during this COVID crisis. Not only in India, but all across the world, we are seeing crisis among people who are not having a sufficient economic means. Is economic the only, or let's say, is economic means the only medium by which a person can survive? Has the world come to this? So, in this regard, I would like to ask Alankrita Dutta from DPS Guwahati to share her views.
Thank you, sir. Thank you so much. I feel very honored to be part of this dialogue. And a very good afternoon to everyone, Damodaran sir and Johnson ma'am, and the fellow speakers out here. Well, as sir mentioned about, not forgetting about our moral values, that is what I was thinking about mentioning in my speech as well. That, with the digital divide that we are having, as fellow speaker Jay mentioned in his speech, and, humans being digitally excluded at the same time, and in the post COVID situation, I think the digital and human beings and digital will be more collaborative in a sense, and at the same time, human values or the moral values which we have, they would be at a decline. So I think those three factors, digital physical combination of human beings and the human values, if they survive, then we can act in a more collaborative way and provide for more better solutions for the world. Take for example, I mean, given the fact that we are in a situation of pandemic now, coming to the things primarily which I want to mention is about the digital divide and the gender inequality. Well, the digital divide, it is something which has become very significant to address. And as we see in the COVID situation, with the schools closing up due to lockdown measures, all the students are going with, adapting to online classes, and many of the students are being left behind, especially in the low income countries, which I guess contribute to roughly about one third of the population of children who are being left behind in the educational aspect. So I feel this digital divide has to be significantly reduced, which is going to become very important in the post-COVID situation or the world which we are going to enter after the pandemic gets over. And coming to gender inequality, I feel fellow speaker Rian mentioned this very clearly and very beautifully about how, the gender inequality is so deeply entrenched in the social institutions and societies that we live in. And even if there are, provisions available for women's empowerment, they are unable to reap those benefits due to the social norms or the beliefs and the restrictive policies which restrain them from, accessing this policy. So I feel the equality can be achieved not necessarily through statutory measures, but also through education and empowerment, especially in social and economic enrichment terms. And yeah, that's all that I have to say. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Alankrita. So, can we come back now to Pratik? I hope his network is working.
Hello, sir. Can you hear me?
Yes, you're audible, Pratik.
Yeah. Technology. First off, I would like to hope that everyone is staying safe and I agree with all of the points that have already been made by the fellow speakers. Am I still audible?
All right, Pradeep, I think I'll have to come back to you again because your network is still having some issues. We'll come back to you later once your network
Okay,
improves.
sir.
Can we move
Okay,
on to Deepak from Assam Don Bosco University regarding his views?
Good afternoon, everyone. So can you hear me, sir? Am I audible?
Yes, yes.
Yes. Good afternoon, everyone. Respected speakers and my fellow participants of UN75 dialogue. I'm really very honored to be a part of this dialogue, and what I want to say is I would want to speak out of my experience because I'm a member of an organization called Tridhara that works for SDG 5, and I would want to cut down the demographic inequal perspective to an individual perspective, and I would also like to touch upon what Sir Abhishek said about the moral perspective towards inequality. My fellow speakers have spoken about technology, the economic perspectives, of the social perspectives as well. But in the individual perspective, I would like to take an example of the Indian class system. Because the Indian class system has been prevalent for thousands of years, and the people who are considered as lower class have been discriminated generations after generations. There has been a certain standard barrier installed in their minds, which actually contributes towards the sustainability of inequality in the society. Now, if I'm in a position to offer something to people who are considered as lower class, people who are discriminated, what am I going to offer? If I'm in a position to offer, what am I going to offer? In a practical situation, when I have been in the rural areas to work for equality, I have faced this, that I'm always in a situation I do not understand, because there is certain gap between what a discriminated one actually wants and what I know I should give them that would make them equal to me or equal to any other privileged section of the society. Now, if I ask this question to any person from that certain category that we consider as lower class, what he or she wants, what equality means to him or his or to him or her, he would probably say he would want his child to be a part of the academic institution, or he would say he should not be stopped from entering the temple. But I know that is not equality for him. That is just the minimal level of expectancy that he has from the society. So equality for me is beyond numbers, beyond numbers of what percent of the lower class people are getting admitted to education institutions, what percent of people from the lower class are getting employed, and this same scenario comes into gender equality as well. If I take an example of a random Indian middle class family where the woman, even if she is employed, even if she holds a respectable position in the society, she comes back to her home after work and wash the dishes. And even if her husband is unemployed and sitting at home, he is not washing the dishes because he is a man. And the women wash the dishes because she is a woman. Now what I want to say is equality is beyond the numbers of what percent of women is educated, what percent of women is given employment opportunities, but the equality in terms of standard of thoughts, not just standard of living. Now coming to the question, what I want to see in the world, or what world I would like to live in after 25 years, I would say I would want to live in a world where equality means more than numbers, and where equality means not just standard of living, but equality in terms of standard of thoughts. Thank you.
So now, as you said, yes, moral values are important, but as our speaker, Adrut, he mentioned that removing inequality perfectly in the next 25 years may or may not be possible. So how do you think that global cooperation and UN, while keeping realistic goals, can contribute to remove inequality in the next 25 years? Can Arindam give his views on this?
So, according to me, it is unrealistic to say that it cannot be achieved. As one of our fellow speakers always mentioned, that Ryan mentioned it in the first speech, that there is nothing that cannot be achieved. So there are certain feasible solutions which can be addressed to India or any other nation, if that is said so, like basic income guarantee. As far as my knowledge is there, India has an existing schemes on providing employment to all classes of people. But maybe what UN or any global corporation can do is that they can monitor proper felicitation of whether the scheme is working or not. So that is feasible, according to me. Thank you.
All right, Arindam, thank you. So, would Jai like to comment on this?
Yes, thank you for that. There are more. Am I audible? Because I think the connection's a little poor.
You are audible. You are audible.
Right, right. So today there are more billionaires in the world than ever. But if you look at the people that are on the street, they're not as concerned about how much money that somebody else has. They are more concerned with having basic access to the things and the requirements and the opportunities that they require. And I think on that limited scale of actually having everybody get access to things like education, sanitation, sort of these basic amenities that are actually essential for their life. I think that is something that is not only doable, but we've actually made such significant progress in those dimensions that we're very close to actually reaching those goals, those specific goals. So that's what, yeah. I think it's a very hopeful outlook when it comes to these matters.
All right, thank you. So, Aditya, do you have any comments on this?
Yes, sir. In 1945, when we will celebrating the 100th anniversary of United Nations, and if we imagine the world at that time, then we will be seeing this world more based on artificial intelligence than now. And we will be facing a kind of, I imagine like that, less social divisions, less social stress, less social tensions, as we will be moving towards equality if we try to develop initiatives from today only, and to reduce that particular economic divide and the political tussles and the cultural biases. We have to act now so that we can achieve the results at that time. And also in the times of COVID-19, I would like to say that we may practice physical distancing, but we should not practice mental distancing, and our hearts should be together, and we should put our hands together to bridge the gap between these unequal divisions. Thank you.
Thank you, Aditya. Now, one of the speakers spoke about digitization of human values and moral values. So, I think it's Adrut. So, Adrut, would you like to comment on this? All right. So let's move on to Rian. Rian, would you like to comment on digitization of human values? Because this issue came up. Multiple speakers spoke about technology and how it can be a great leveler, and it can also be play havoc with people who have not who do not have access to technology. So keeping that in mind, what do you think in 2045, when United Nations turns 100, what would you like the role of technology to be in that time? Rian, you're not audible. Please unmute your mic.
Yes, sir. Sir, am I audible now?
Yes, perfect.
So technology obviously has got a very important role to play in our lives, but like the two sides of a coin, obviously everything will have its own pros and cons. So technology is also being misused by people around the world, if we look at in certain cases. And there have been different privacy issues also over the usage of different technological apps. Now, recently also, if we look at how the HRD ministry is trying to revive the education sector by trying to, provide education through the medium of TV channels, through the medium of different apps like Swayam Prabha and Diksha. But still, to some extent, to the rural areas, in certain remote areas, children are not able to access this. And no matter, I mean, they can't even afford a TV. In certain areas, there is not even electricity. So it can be very well imagined how technology can't reach up to those areas, and whether technology should be enforced and should be used as a medium of digitalization. Well, for that, so we have both middle income countries, high income countries, and low income countries in the world. If we look at the high income countries, US, UK, very easy for them to enforce that. Their economy is very prosperous enough. But if we look at countries of the African subcontinent, if we look at India also, we do not have that much resources that we can make technology accessible to each and every corner. Of course, it will be really good if technology is accessible, but it's not possible to that extent that we'll be able to make it reach to every corner. So we have to look at other alternatives also when we have to, breach this issue of inequality. So technology can be the only solution to that.
Yes, you're right. Rian, there is also this issue of human rights, no? Because using these platforms, students in the urban centers, they're able to learn through online classes. But then people who are from a not so privileged class, what about their rights to education? What about their human rights? So when we're talking about inequality, we are also talking about a dimension of human rights in this, yes, right? So in that connection, Jay wants to pitch in. Jay, yes.
Hello?
Yes, Jay,
yes.
I
wanted to respond to what Rian just said, and it's a very good point about the accessibility of technology. But I'd like to comment on countries like Africa and like continents like Africa or in the sort of local context of India. I don't think technology in the sense necessarily relates to having access to internet or having sort of access to some really sophisticated means. It's just a matter of having an appropriate level of technology at level. So for even like the poorest sectors, having access to something as basic as a cellular phone has sort of revolutionized the way farmers can connect to markets, the way they can access information about the weather, the way they can sort of so even basic things that sort of seem like not as very like technologically sophisticated tools are actually great, are almost democratic in their access. And so these networks that actually are enabled by such technologies are sort of the bedrock that we need to be focusing on, not necessarily sort of making sure everybody has access to speed of the internet. I think it's the technologies of resources, of information that is what is the sort of key strength of technologies for local communities.
Thank you, Jay. So I think Arindam also wants to add in to this conversation.
Hi. So I'm really taken aback by the beautiful articulation of Jay by saying that technology accessibility is a democratic access. So exactly, it's a democratic. You never know who is using for what purpose. So, but I must ensure, and we all should put emphasis on the fact that technology should be used, but it should be driven by moral values. Because, we are hearing that people are researching about finding minerals in Mars. So haven't we already destructed Earth? Are we left to explore more on Earth that we are focusing? Are we trying to destroy another planet? No, definitely not. So first of all, we have to ensure that the place which we are living in must be equipped with all the essential amenities. And obviously, technology has two sides of a coin, as Ryan beautifully said. So I would like to quote that democratic technology, that sounds good, but it should be driven by moral values, or else after 25 years, our next generation would have another dialogue on saying bridge the divide posed by digitization of moral values. Thank you.
Right. So, Dipasharoj, would you like to comment?
Yes, sir. Yes, sir. I wanted to comment on what Rian said. Making technology and resources accessible to everyone. What I feel is, on a very simple note, it is possible to make technology and resource accessible to everyone unless and until we stop wasting the resources. How much are we using? If we can divide the technology and divide the resources equally, we can definitely make it accessible even to the entire population, even to the one who is not having the privilege of accessing technology and resources now. We can make it accessible for them the time when we make it equally distributed. Thank you.
All right, thank you. So, Nayantara, you spoke about feminism. So, in your vision, how do you imagine the future, and what should be the role of UN towards your interests, that is feminism, by 2045?
First, I think I would genuinely want that people get the correct idea of what feminism truly stands for. A lot of people today, they think that feminism means putting down men and just putting women on a pedestal. That is absolutely not what feminism stands for, and we have to properly internalize the meaning, the proper meaning of feminism. And when I talk about feminism, I don't want it to be associated with just women. I want that I feel that men should be getting an equal part in this. So I think, in my opinion, in the future, I would like to see a world where someone's gender or someone's sexual orientation or any such personal aspect of their life is not a determining factor for what their potentialities or what their capabilities are, where they're able to achieve, or where they're able to able to become whoever that they want as a person, where they're able to achieve their personal aspirations, and we have to work towards towards providing that opportunity. We all have to come together, create a common platform, create a common mission or a common ideal or value where we can achieve what we all want to achieve, where we can fulfill our personal aspirations and reach our maximum capabilities as a society.
All right, thank you, Nayantara. So, can we get back to Pratik now? Has his internet connection improved? Pratik? All right, I think he's still facing issues. So, Adrut, would you like to comment on this discussion from a feminist side? As Nayantara said, would you like to expand on that? Okay, Adrut is also missing. So, Dr. Jonathan, are you on call? Dr. Jonathan? All right. So, I'm just putting this out so anyone can, pitch in. But what are the concrete steps that you want by 2045? But we want also to suggest some steps. Like one of the steps which came out during the discussion was regionalization of United Nations. That is a wonderful concept. That's what I think, because yes, a lot of people know English, but then there are many people who do not know English and French. So it would help if all the people can understand what the United Nations is actually doing and in which direction the world is going. Because I'm sure that there is more than half of the world population who do not know what are sustainable development goals. So in that regard, what are the concrete steps that you think the United Nations can take for the next 25 years. I think Aditya wants to speak. He's raising his hands. So Aditya, would you please speak?
Thank you, sir, for the opportunity. Emmanuel Wallerstein has propagated world system theory, in which the theory suggests that the world is divided into a global north-south divide. The global north countries are capitalist countries who are very prosperous, and the global south countries are like proletariat countries. So United Nations, when we see United Nations as a kind of world government, then United Nations can also work upon this to reduce the gaps among the international political inequality as well. And if I talk about the actions which need to be taken, then we as students, we can discuss or deliberate upon this particular issue, but do we really expect a common man to think over these issues? And we get the answer in negative. Cannot expect that a common man can think over these issues. He just thinks how he can breed his family, or a normal student thinks how he can pass his examinations. So no, we have to propose to the students, fellow citizens as well, to think and deliberate over these issues. And the government has to make the governance public friendly. When government is public friendly, or when the organizations authorities are public friendly, then automatically we will see the changes at ground level. Businesses, as Adrut said, has to follow the corporate social responsibility. The civil society has to release campaigns, and as individuals we have to be aware about our rights and duties, fundamental rights, fundamental duties. Read the Constitution of India as we read the religious scriptures as well. And the academia, they don't just have to print the books, but also have to aware the citizens to read the books. And as Nelson Mandela said, that education is the weapon with which we can change the world. So with this, I end my talk. Thank you.
Thank you, Aditya. So I think Jay also wants to speak. Yes, Jay.
Thank you. That was really well put. I'd like to actually connect what you and what Mr. Chaudhary said. So as UN, as the centralized governing overarching body, I'd like to sort of reiterate that the UN as this world government also needs to be a local decentralized form of government. UN should be, a local entity, a local presence in every village, so that like individuals on a local level can actually sort of relate to the missions or of the UN. And in order to do this, there are sort of ways in which decentralized governance has been very successful, that I followed sort of these Gandhian models of how to improve like a village. I've worked with this non-government organization in Madhya Pradesh called Samaj Pragati Sahyog. And one of the key things, or like one of the most striking things I got from them was they said that their ultimate goal was to make themselves redundant. So the goal of any sort of help in the local community is actually to empower the community itself. So it shouldn't be that an external body needs to come in, companies coming in the villages, or we don't need top-down models of government to actually help support these local communities, but it should be sort of within these entrepreneurial little villages that they actually learn to support and develop themselves. And that is a truly sustainable model for overcoming inequality. Thanks.
Thanks, Jay. Thanks, Jay. So I think Rian is also raising his hand. So please.
Yes, sir. So you have raised a very pertinent question, to which I would like to put forward my point of view. So we are talking here about resolving inequality and the UN taking various steps and trying to implement it. But sir, I believe that firstly, if we want to achieve equality, equality has to be firstly attained in the United Nations itself. If we see the United Nations Security Council, it is dominated by 5 members, which are having the veto power. So my question is, where is the equality amidst all that? In the World Trade Organization also, such dominance is prevalent. They ask the developing countries to liberalize their economies, but the developed countries, they themselves don't liberalize it for us. So the policies are very much discriminatory, especially towards countries like India in this regard. And secondly, I believe that especially after the disintegration of the USSR in 1991, the United States of America had become a global hegemon. And as of now, the world seems like a global village, and the US being US being the village headman, which is controlling everything, influencing our culture. So similarly, the policies of the UN will also be shaped because of this dominance. It will be affected by this dominance of the US. So equality first needs to be attained in the UN itself. And as to providing concrete solutions for that, so for upholding that inequality should be resolved economically to ensure that people don't die of poverty, people don't die of hunger, we need to ensure that they're employed. We need to ensure that the right to work, which is a fundamental human right, needs to be ensured. So even in certain cases, if the government is not able to provide jobs to all the unemployed people, then unemployment benefits or unemployment allowances should be provided to them. Best example is the MGNREGA Act of 2005, which was implemented in India. And also there has to be strict legislation adopted by the countries against all the social evils which promote inequality in any country. So that would be my point. Thank you.
Thank you, Ria. But Alankrita, would you like to add anything?
Sir, I completely agree with Rian regarding the points he mentioned about the inequality being within the organization itself. I think that needs to be addressed, wherein pertaining a country like US shouldn't be, preoccupied with its own benefits, whereas excluding the benefits of the other countries at the same time. So I completely agree with that. And regarding the regional collaboration, I think what UN can do is they can collaborate with local groups in regions, in various kinds of regions and NGOs and governments, in order to get to know the people better, their working systems and their social systems. And I think in order to be inequality to be addressed, I just want to mention a situation wherein about gender equality, wherein what happens is that women, there are 1/3 seats in the local government bodies are reserved for women. At times, what happens is that women get elected, but the office duty is handled by men, those by the men. So I feel that if the woman would have called upon for her own rights at that particular point of time, that I am the one to hold the office, then I think things would have changed. So I think the grassroots level consciousness about your own rights, about your social consciousness, what you are, who you identify yourself with, I think that is something which is really, really important in order to address inequality, because these social norms, these restrictive policies which are there within the family, the household, they restrict a lot you from achieving your own rights. So I think that's what I believe in.
Right. Thank you, Alankrita. Nayantara was raising her hand. Would you like to comment?
I would like to say that I very much agree with what Aditya Trivedi said when he said that a common man who is struggling himself to make ends meet is not going to think about the sustainable development goals that has been adopted by an international organization. We have this inbuilt need to actually first meet our own personal biological needs before we can think about the community as a whole. So what I think and I feel is that we all have to start to actually inculcate those values that of working for the community from inception itself. We have to actually start to change the structure of society, both Western and Asian societies, to actually encourage collectivistic attitudes more. I think today, like as Rian and many others also had said that we have the US being the center of power in the world, we have this tendency to adopt the values that are reflected in American culture, most of which is individualistic attitudes. So I genuinely feel that we have to adopt more of a collectivistic attitude to community, to people, to society, and look at our development as very much interlinked, interconnected. And it is only then that we can actually achieve what we are wanting to achieve. And I think we're all very much aware. And though the idea may seem very depressing at first, but I feel that it is something that we just have to come to terms with, that the fight against inequality, the desire to achieve the best that we can, will be a long-standing battle. It'll continue even for longer. It'll continue over the years. The goals may change, but the desire to actually be the best that we can will remain, and we have to be ready to fight for that. So I think that we have to continue to actually come up with innovative solutions to better ourselves, to make the world more comfortable, a fairer and a more opportunistic world to live in. Thank you.
Thank you, Nayantara. So we are running out of time. So as Nayantara said, I mean, there could not have been a better conclusion to that this struggle is going to continue. We need to find out innovative solutions. We need to adjust and adapt to whatever the world throws at us. If we have got a pandemic, we need to adapt to this, and we need to work to ensure that we get out of this stronger than before. Now, I see Dr. Damodaran is with us. Dr. Damodaran, would you like to conclude this dialogue by some closing remarks?
No, I didn't really want to intrude again. I was listening. I realized that if all of us had our cameras on, the bandwidth would be compromised, and I knew some of us were having difficulty getting on. I've really been very enriched by this discussion. I think there have been a number of points that have come through. I was particularly heartened by the reference that you brought in about moral values, because I think it's something that the United Nations Charter was based upon. Even though we avoided words like morals or ethics, that single phrase, the dignity and worth of the human person, once you accept that, then a lot of the very, very insightful comments that have been made in the course of this afternoon come into perspective, whether it is artificial intelligence, whether it is gender issues like feminism, or the point that you just made about adaptation. And I think this is something which I would urge you all to reflect upon. Should the earth be made to adapt to our human will, or will our human will have to adapt to the earth and all that the earth brings with it, including the current crisis we're in, the pandemic? And I thought I would leave you with a thought which comes from one of the oldest texts in our country, in India, the Vedas. And it essentially says this, that every individual must work for the family. Every family must work for the community. Every community must work for the state. Every state must work for the nation. Every nation must work for the world. And the world must work for every individual. So this wonderful circular connection between I as an individual, my responsibility at progressive levels to the world to which I belong, but in turn, my legitimate expectation that the world will be there for me, is, I think, at the heart of all the powerful arguments that have been put forward this afternoon. It is at the heart of what the United Nations is about. And I think it is the heart of what each one of us, as a thinking, feeling, compassionate human being, believes in. So let us not give up our responsibility to the world, whether now or in 2045. But equally, let us not ever expect that the world will be allowed to give up its responsibility to us. Thank you so much for allowing me to join you. It has really been an enriching morning for me, afternoon for you. And I do hope that at some point our paths will cross in person. I know that I will continue to look forward to learning from you. Namaskar.
Thank you, Doctor. So, in conclusion, I would like to thank Assam Don Bosco University and United Nations for holding and letting us organize this wonderful dialogue. And it is wonderful for us to see our young leaders, the people, the decision makers of tomorrow. I'm sure that this dialogue will give you some food for your own thoughts. And I'm sure that in 25 years, if we meet each other again, we will be able to deliberate on the things that we said today and on the actions that you have taken towards those goals that you have so eloquently put forward today. So thank you, everyone. And I would also like to thank our viewers. There are multiple people who have tuned in the YouTube live stream. I would like to thank them as well. And I would like to thank all of them who have commented on the YouTube video. So thank you, everyone. Have a wonderful evening. Thank you.
Thank you.